I've lived most of my life by a couple of mantras, I guess you'd call them. One is always do the right thing. And the second one is do the thing you fear. If you are willing to put yourself out there and do whatever it is you fear, then it's going to be a lot easier the next time, and the next time, and the next time.
Welcome to Lessons in Legacy, the podcast by Santori Peters, where we explore the challenges and opportunities that come with building, growing, and preserving wealth across multiple generations. Join us as we uncover the essential lessons to protect and pass on your wealth for generations to come. So today I am joined by Dick Singer, who is a Master Chair for Vistage Worldwide. For over 20 years, Dick has assisted CEOs, C-suite leaders, managers, and supervisors in achieving their business and personal goals. He is the recent recipient of the Chair of Excellence Award at Vistage Worldwide and the 2024 recipient of Vistage's most prestigious honor, the Don Cope Memorial Award. Dick, thank you for joining me here today.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
So I think, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about here today is your start in business was in broadcasting, right?
Yep.
And I guess, how did that experience in corporate America and broadcasting lead you to working with leaders through Vistage?
Well, I guess I decided I wanted to be in broadcasting when I was about 12 or 14 years old. And so when I graduated high school, I had to earn the money to go because we didn't have a lot of money. So I stayed out of college for at least a semester and then went to Temple University because I grew up in Philadelphia and majored in broadcast communications. Through that, I'll make this very brief, but through that I got a job at a local TV station in Philadelphia. I always remember this driving down, but they called me for an interview, and driving down for the interview, I'm thinking to myself, is it going to be vice president? Is it going to be general manager? What's it going to be?
Yeah.
And it was the mailroom. So I was the mail boy. But anyway, I worked my way up in that company and eventually got into sales. I was in production. I was a producer director. I actually directed Romper Room, if you remember that show. And then realized that the money was in sales.
Okay.
And the top managers were coming out of sales as well. So I decided to go into sales. And I was reasonably successful in sales. And I got promoted to one of those stations in Cleveland, worked there for a couple of years as sales manager, came back, got hired by a national sales rep firm owned by Cox Communications, representing, 40 or 50 TV stations around the country. Worked my way up in that company to become general sales manager. But always wanted to be in business for myself. I really had not a problem, but I really didn't like having to answer to people who, in many cases, I wouldn't have even hired. So a friend of mine and myself, who was also in the broadcasting industry, we decided that we were going to go out and raise money and buy radio stations. And so we did that. We went out, we raised money. We bought radio stations in Lynchburg, Virginia, Kingman, Arizona, Lake Tahoe, Sedona, Cottonwood, Arizona. And we started running our own business. And it was an incredible experience for me and for all of us, really. My wife was a partner as well. But the problem was that we bought these Lake Tahoe stations figuring that they would be the cash cow because there was a lot of money up there. Shortly after we bought those stations, shortly after we closed on those stations, California went into a 6-year drought. Lake Tahoe had beaches that had never existed before. I mean, the lake was down, I think, 11 feet, something like that. There were boat docks that were completely out of the water. And the business and the advertising business there is primarily retail. The retail churn rate went up to about 45% because There was no snow. There was just
Yeah.
nothing to do up there.
Yeah.
And so we came pretty close to personal bankruptcy,
Mhm.
which was, believe it or not, it turned out to be a pretty good experience,
Mhm.
learning experience. Fortunately, somebody bought the stations from us. And anyway, to move it along here, I came back and was hired by Knight Ridder, the newspaper company,
Okay.
to help them establish a 10 o'clock news show in Philadelphia. So I was hired as the director of sales and marketing. I did that. They brought me down to Miami, to the Miami Herald, which was their flagship paper, and asked me to help them extend their reach into broadcasting. So I created a Spanish language 3-hour morning news show. I put the whole program together. I formatted it. I negotiated with the Spanish language radio station to get it on the air. I hired the talent to do the news program. And I will tell you that I don't speak one word of Spanish.
Okay.
But I decided I'm going to make this happen, and we made it happen.
Yeah.
Then I went to work for a company owned by Barry Diller, who you may have heard of, running radio TV stations. I was hired to be the regional manager for Sinclair Broadcasting.
Okay.
And so I oversaw their 2 TV stations here and some TV stations in other markets. Shortly after 9/11, I got fired. And the CEO who had hired me had already left the company, and the new CEO and I were not on the same page. So 9/11, the business went away, basically, because of 9/11. And so he had an excuse to let me go. And I had a marketing professor at Temple University one time who I'll never forget said, "You haven't lived until you've been fired." He was right. Started doing a lot of networking, picked up some opportunities to do some coaching of executives.
Okay.
And these were primarily founders of businesses who were great at founding a business but did not know how to run a business.
Okay.
And I helped them do that, helped them learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And then through all of my networking contacts, I found out about Vistage, which at the time was called Tech. It stood for the executive committee.
Yeah.
And somebody called me and said, they do very similar things to what you're doing. However, they do it on a much larger scale.
Okay.
So I went on the web, on the internet, and found their website. Called them. They were headquartered in San Diego. Interviewed with them, went through a series of interviews, including some video interviews, and then was invited to become a Vistage, tech chair, which is now Vistage. What really intrigued me about the organization was, number one, the mission, which is really in essence, to take leaders of companies and help them become better leaders and better people. The second thing that attracted me was that I would not be an employee. We're all contractors.
Okay.
And that was my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So in 2003, I went to their training in San Diego, which was world-class training. And that was in June of 2003. In November of 2003, I launched my first group with 8 members.
Okay.
In April of 2005, I bought a group from a chair who was retiring. This group is only a couple of years old. It's the group that actually you're in.
Okay.
And then in 2006, I formed a key group, which is like the next level of C-suite people. And then I've done some other groups since then. At one point, I had 5 groups. I've given some up because my wife and I want to do some more traveling. So that's really what got me there. But I loved the broadcasting industry. I never thought that I would get paid to mentor people.
Yeah.
And because I always loved mentoring people, and I found that with Vistage, and it's a phenomenal organization, and we do great work. And Vistage now is in 40 countries around the world with over 45,000 members.
Wow.
So it has really grown
from
the time I got involved.
Yeah. Now, working with a lot of those business owners and leaders, are there like common traits, that you see with the leaders or even the successful companies, like even whether it was your broadcasting or even just with Vistage, like what are some common traits or themes that you see across the board?
Well, I think leaders of companies, for the most part, suffer from the imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Which means that they don't feel, and I've experienced that, so I can really relate to it. And the imposter syndrome is it's one of two things. Either you have gotten to a point, position in your career that you don't think you deserve to be in.
Okay.
And your job is to make sure that nobody else figures that out.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have gotten to a place in your career that you've dreamed about being in, and it just doesn't seem as important to you, and you think that everybody already figured out that you don't know anything. So that's really what the imposter syndrome is, and a lot of leaders of companies suffer from the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I help them understand is what they're really basic, what their talents are,
Mm-hmm.
how they've evolved, what they've built. Because people who are entrepreneurs, not everybody can be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, very few people have the ability to be an entrepreneur because you have to be willing to take a lot of risks.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. We often talk about the fact that the employees don't understand what the owner of the company is going through because the employee can always find another job.
Mm-hmm.
The owner has all the risk. I mean, all the money that they invest, everything else. So if the business goes under, they go under.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to realize that. And it's something that people who start companies, who are entrepreneurs, have to learn a little bit more about. They've got to learn that they're running a company. They want to have a great culture in the company,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still their company that they're running, and they've got to run it in the best interests of the company, not of any individual people in the company.
You bring up a great point. I mean, I think it's how do you work with business leaders, CEOs, to make those difficult decisions or to face those, whether it's the imposter syndrome, whether it's succession planning or leadership challenges or personnel challenges. Like, how do you as a Vistage chair work with individuals in those groups?
Well, the job of the Vistage chair is not to have answers. The job of the Vistage chair is to ask questions.
Okay.
And help the leader get to the conclusion that they're supposed to get to. Because a lot of this stuff they already know, they just haven't thought about it.
Okay.
But I think that when you talk about succession, things like that, the biggest issue when it comes to succession in an organization is that the leader of the company doesn't give it enough time. If you're thinking at some point that you want to retire or you want to sell the company, whatever it is you want to do, or you want to leave it to your kids, you need to start planning for that at least 10 years out.
Okay.
And most leaders of companies wait till 5 years or even 3 years out.
Right, before it's too
and
late.
then they're scrambling.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I try to help them understand is, you're at some point, you're going to want to exit this business.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to wait until you exit it in a box. You want to exit it while you can still enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Right?
Exactly, yeah. And so learning how to do that. And then trusting the people that you have determined are going to take the business over, whether it's your kids. I have one member who actually is in your group who sold the company to some of the employees. Mm-hmm. And sold it really for less than it was worth, but he wanted to help the employees out. And but he had started planning that years in advance, so that when it finally happened, these people just fell right into the job of running the company.
Yeah.
Transitioning from being the leader who's day-to-day running the company to backing away and either retiring or taking a smaller part in the company is very, very difficult.
I mean, you brought up the issue of succession planning. Like, are there any best practices for somebody who's like thinking about that? Maybe they are 10 years away or 5 years away. Like, what do you think are some things that they should be looking at or trying to address with the succession of their business?
Well, first of all, they should be talking to their attorneys and accountants to see what they want to set up. Because if they, you can either sell the business, you can sell it to your employees, you can give it to your kids if you want. But whoever you sell it, well, if you sell it outright, then you're kind of out of it. So it's just make sure you get your money. But if you sell it to a group of employees or you leave it to your children to take it over, you have to be really sure that these people can run the company. And that they're not just looking to make a lot of money, not knowing what the work involved to make that money is. And so you really have to prepare those people to take over the company. And you have to know when the time comes to go away from it and let them take over. And they're not going to do it the same way you did. And you have to understand that. They're going to do it in their way, or you can just guide them. That's all you can do.
I mean, I think you bring up a great point, like about, are there any mistakes in your experience that you've seen business owners make when going through that process? I mean, you mentioned, talking to their attorneys, talking to their CPAs, talking to their financial advisors, whoever it is, their trusted contacts. What mistakes have you seen people make when going down that process?
Well, I've seen people make a big mistake in determining it on their own what they think the value of the company is. I had somebody who thought his company was worth $10 million because his revenue was about $5 million. And turns out that the company was worth less than $5 million when he finally got a valuation of it. So I think thinking what you think the company is worth as opposed to getting a valuation, professional evaluation for the company is really critical, because you really need to know what the value is. You need to know what the value of the assets, if you're selling assets, the goodwill, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of owners of companies don't think about that. They just think, well, hey, we're doing $5 million revenue, so it's probably worth twice that, $10 million. But they don't look at what the bottom line is, what the profits are, what the multiples are in that industry, those kinds of things.
And what other businesses may be selling for, And I guess the other thing too is, like, if you're thinking about it from the business perspective, hey, my business is worth $5 million. You're expecting to get $5 million out of it. Now it's only worth $3 million. How do you address that gap? What are some things that business owners can do to address that gap?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to get the valuation up front. You can't guess at what your company's worth. You need to know what it's worth. And you need to also understand that it's going to be worth different things to different people. If you're selling it to somebody who is going to buy it strategically, then it's probably worth more. If you're selling it to somebody who just wants to buy a business and be in business, then it's probably going to be worth less. So you need to understand the difference between those two kinds of people.
So from a professional network standpoint, if you're trying to go down that path, say, of succession planning, we mentioned CPA, right? Somebody who has an expertise maybe in business valuations, a business attorney, and then possibly even an estate planning attorney.
And of course, a financial advisor. Can't forget that.
Thank you. But I think it that just kind of strengthens the bench in terms of making those decisions. Are there any tools, books, frameworks that you consistently recommend to business owners to, not on the succession planning front, but strengthening their leadership skills or even business strategy skills? I mean, is there anything you...
Yeah, there's a couple of books that I think are great books. One is called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. And she really talks about how you talk to people, how you reprimand them if you have to, how you compliment them. It's really a well-written book and a well-thought-out book. Another one, and I can't think of the name of the author off the top of my head, is Think Again. Which really talks about, you think something's going to happen, but think again, because maybe it's going to go a different direction. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
The other thing when it comes to ownership of a company and selling it or whatever, you also run into the issue of partnerships. And I've known people who have gone into business as partners because they're best friends, and they haven't planned the worst. They've just planned for the best, and the worst happened. And suddenly they're equal partners, and they have no operating agreement that says if something happens, here's how the company gets bought out, here's whatever the process is going to be.
Yeah.
And so now they're tied up in litigation for years, trying to figure out who's going to get the company or how they're going to split it. So no matter how close you are, even if it's a family situation, there has to be an operating agreement that talks about how you unwind this deal if the worst does happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something, I guess, when you think about creating the business, it's not something that like, what if, right?
Right.
What could be next?
Right.
So that's a great point to think about. As business owners wish to, let's say elevate their company to the next level, what do you think is a crucial first step that they need to take?
I think they have to have the right people on board. We often say that the people, when you're the founder of a business, when you're the entrepreneur, you hit certain inflection points, and the people who get you to one point can't necessarily get you further beyond that. And that's a very difficult thing for people who have started businesses and surround themselves with these people who are wearing all different kinds of hats because it's a new business.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you reach a point where we want to grow the business. These people can't get you there.
Yeah. Having the right people in the right seats.
Yes. And it's very difficult for the owners, for the business people to recognize the fact that they're going to have to let some of these people go who they were very close to. They built a company with. But you do, as Jim Collins says, you got to have the right people in the right seats on the bus. But Jim Collins also says, if you get it 90%, you're doing really well.
Yeah. Another great Jim Collins book, Good to Great.
Yeah.
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 It's one of my dad's favorites, and one I think he made me read when I was about 13. So, I guess in closing, is there any parting wisdom or any parting thoughts on things that you think that as business owners or even leaders or even as individuals that we should be doing or focusing on to grow ourselves?
Well, something, I've lived most of my life by a couple of mantras, I guess you'd call them. One is always, always do the right thing. And the second one is do the thing you fear.
Okay.
Because if you are willing to put yourself out there and do whatever it is you fear, then it's going to be a lot easier the next time and the next time and the next time. And I think integrity and doing the right thing, and sometimes you're trying to do the right thing and you're all alone, but you got to move forward. You got to move forward. So I don't know if that's what you asked me for, but that's what I'll give you.
No, I think that's great. It's face your fears.
Yeah.
Face your fears. So, well, Dick, thank you very much. I appreciate the time here today.
Good to be here. When do I get the check?